a box of towels and a Gatorade cooler, and he might say that Gafford was drinking all the Gatorade at practice. That's why he moved him. Like if that's one guy you're going to fleece, it'll probably be him.
Police in Dallas would allow JFK to go in another convertible if he had another chance. That they have a better chance of doing that than having fucking a phone call come from Palinka to Dallas ever again. They will not allow it. But yes, I agree. Gafford would be great for that.
Welcome to Rogue Bogues, another week of the basketball series. Playoffs wrapping up. Golden State, Houston just wrapped up. We actually delayed the podcast to watch that game, unlike yesterday's game of the Clippers in Denver, which was a wash. Pro, what's going on?
Bogues, happy May the 4th be with you day today, man. I know you guys are a day ahead, but, how you doing?
Pretty good. We don't do May 4th here, do we, Trent?
Yeah, May the 4th be with you. You get a bit here and there on social media, but it's not a public holiday.
It's a fifth year though, bro. I remember we're one day ahead, so celebration would have been yesterday for us. Today's a public holiday. A lot going on with the playoff stuff, so we'll get right into it. We'll go through the matchups in a second. But the Grizzlies pro, in a bit of news, Thomas Lasalo has been officially hired as the head coach. He's the first Finnish-born NBA head coach in NBA history, pro.
We're going to do that first bullshit today, huh? You're going to just open it right up?
Well, he is.
Just going to go with it, huh?
Not bullshit, legit. First Finnish-born head coach. But
awesome.
Right
Golf
hiring,
clap.
What do you think?
I mean, I think they had to do it. I mean, they got so much bad publicity for firing Taylor Jenkins and, firing their offensive guy. I know LaRoche, you have to, you have to hire the guy, in my opinion, because they would have got, not that they care, but I thought that, hey, look, give the guy a chance. You coveted the guy. You paid him a shitload of money to be your assistant. You might as well see if the thing works. I just don't think their roster is good enough. So I don't care if they had Red Auerbach morphed in with fucking Phil Jackson, morphed in with Greg Popovich. I don't really give a fuck. Like, I just think that they're limited to what they're gonna do anyway. But I think hey, look, give the guy a try, see where it's at. But I think they need some major movement in that roster to try to get something going. What did you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think considering the moves they made mid-season to do that at the point of the season, when they did it, they kind of were forced to do this regardless. And look, he's supposed to be a very good coach. He's highly touted, pretty switched on. A lot of people say he knows what he's doing. The proof will be in the pudding. I don't think Memphis's roster is bad. I think they should be a top 5 or 6 team in the West, I think, when healthy and focused and together. And I think it all stems on what we discussed last week with the Ja Morant piece. If he's locked in and focused and professional and stopping with all the extra antics and stuff like that, I think they can be a very good team. I think they're a very good young team. They play both ends. They guard. They've got some offense. I mean, they have the capability to be. You look at this Houston team. Houston probably a bit more younger talent, like young talent, early 20s type talent, but similar type rosters really. That they if Houston can get a 2 seed, albeit they got knocked out early, but I think Memphis has a chance to be decent if they can get it right.
They have a couple of pieces for sure. Just Morant's health. I think that's the biggest problem with him. This year it was definitely the health. You can't win. You can't expect to go deep in the playoffs when you're playing 50 games and you're out as much as he has been. Being healthy has been a problem for him the last 3 years or so. And I think when that's a problem, and and then the other stuff you talk about, being locked in and the other problems, yeah, for sure. Look, with him, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., it's a great 3-man combination. Plus with, their bench is decent with Pippen Jr., Kennard, and, Zach Edey had a really good, rookie campaign for sure. They have some pieces that go in the right direction. It's just, I think with Morant, you got to find a way to get him to 65 to 70 game, closer to that 70 game mark for them to really have a chance. But it'll be interesting. Look, their coach is supposed to run a hell of a pick and roll offense. As one of the best in the world when he was in Europe. And look, I'm not a big fan of like this guy's gonna, or any black guy's gonna bring in some offense that's gonna revolutionize the game. But like I said, they spent a lot of money. They picked a side with him, not only over Jenkins but over Nola Roach. So look, they have faith in him. you might as well roll with it, see what you got. But the health of Morant's going to be the biggest factor in that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Also, some other news: Greg Popovich officially moves to the front office in a president of basketball role, and Mitch Johnson officially takes over. I mean, the writing was on the wall that was all going to happen if Pop didn't come back to full health. I don't think he has, from a point of being able to travel through an 82-game schedule at his age. I think the smart move for the Spurs to keep him involved at some capacity. It'd be interesting to see how much say he does have on a day-to-day. I assume it will be pretty heavy to start off with, or where they go with that. But Mitch Johnson was always going to be the mainstay coach if something was to go Australia, and that's not happened in San Antonio. So that's a pretty easy box tick for San Antonio, not surprising at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, the guy's a legend in what he did for the last 25 to 27 years as a head coach there, and what he did with. I think that him and R.C. Buford were the perfect pair. I think he got him. It was interesting. Most of the players that they got were a special breed of not only talent but guys that could be coached and could be coached hard and will sort of submit to the coach. He didn't really have to deal with any, really head cases that were major players. Not that Kawhi Leonard was a major head case, but that was the first guy that would probably sway away from, just sort of just being lock, stock, and barrel, whatever Pop said. Obviously, they had their issues at the end, but look, he had a great career. Had a great career, revolutionized the game in the sense that of load management, tanking, that, a couple of things that are major players in the game today. 5 championships, did a great job. A million coaches that or ex-players that played for him or coached under him ended up being GMs, head coaches, really well done assistant coaches in the league. So did a hell of a job. I agree. The last couple of years have been rough, with the advanced age and, 82 games and dealing with young players and dealing with what you need to do to be successful in the job. I think this is the best way to go. And look, he's had a big say in what goes on in that building probably since the mid '90s. So I think that he'll be, him and R.C. Buford will work together and their other staff as far as running the team and putting pieces in place. But look, they already got the hard part done. They got Wemby, you got Fox, you got a couple of good role players. You got Castle, just won the Rookie of the Year. So you got some good pieces going forward. I think Johnson did a good job, subbing in for Pop this year. He's worked under him the last couple of years. So I think it's, it was an easy move for them to sort of transition to him going forward.
Agree with that one. Last one in the news realm. What did you make of Haliburton's dad and all those antics after the Milwaukee Indiana series finished?
I think it was a complete disgrace, to be honest with you. And I mean, there's a million ways you can go with this. I mean, as a dad, no adult in the room. I mean, just to be able to do that. Look, you're putting Giannis in to be honest with you, I thought Giannis should have knocked him the fuck out, whoever he was. You get a fan that goes in your face with a towel. No offense to Haliburton or his dad or what have you, but you're waving a towel in a guy that you don't know if he knows you. Maybe he did know you, maybe he didn't. But you're just waving a fucking towel after the guy lost to the playoffs. Totally disrespectful. Should have knocked him the fuck out. It should have been Friday Part 2 and Debo just come in and just knock him the fuck out. It's a security risk. Fans themselves think that they're a part of this. Dads and family members are even worse. They know. They've been around this thing long enough. And I think the Pacers handled it well, banning them from going to any other game the rest of the playoffs in the foreseeable future. I would have lifetime banned him. You don't do that. You don't go up to a player. I don't care if it's the playoffs or not. It's totally bad look. It's awful for security allowing that to happen. That could have been anybody. I mean, the guy was just sitting behind the basket. That could have been anybody, and it could have been much worse. That could have been Malice in the Palace Part 2. But I'll give Giannis a lot of credit because he held his ground. I would have just knocked him the fuck out.
Yeah, I think it was horrible. For those not familiar, after the siren went, Tyrese Haliburton's father was sitting courtside under one of the basket stanchions. He then walked onto the court and held I think it was a Tyrese Haliburton flag, right? Or a sign. Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Yeah. Held it.
Yeah,
It's
towel.
probably like an A3 size, if not bigger, and just held it up in front of Giannis at about, I'd probably say 10 feet away, a couple of meters away, and just stood there as Giannis was kind of going through his emotions about losing a series, and then locked eyes onto this guy, and he's just like, what the hell is this guy doing? Didn't do anything at the time.
On the court.
On the court, yeah, on the court. And then I guess minutes later, Giannis went on a rampage with, was it Mathurin? Was it Mathurin, or whose head did he grab?
Yeah, so he went in
Either
to
him or Nemhart.
talk to Mathurin.
And gave him a head grip.
Yeah, it was like talking to him, and then Mathurin then like pushed him away or whatever. I think he was like just giving him some advice or like saying,
if you watch the replay, Giannis grabbed him from the back of the head.
I think once
squashed him in.
Mathurin started like
Pushing
pushing
him
away was when
Holding
you saw
him.
Giannis was like, no, you're staying here. You're
Yeah,
locked in.
and then
right now.
then he caught the dad face to face. But it's just, I agree, it's just, and this all, I hate to bring drama around up in this conversation. This starts with his dad and the antics. Now you got these dads that are just like, we're not there to see you. You're not part of the show. Don't put yourself in situations where the camera can be on you. As a father, like, let your son enjoy the moment, man. Like, I never say never. And I heard Giannis's press conference afterwards, and I thought it was great. He basically said, there's a respect factor. He went back to his father knowing, when he won the championship, his mum was going to come on the court and he didn't know whether she would be allowed, whether he could give her a hug. They were kind of like respectful of all that. And then he also said that he hopes he's not that father. And he said, like, check back with me in 20 years. And I'm kind of the same boat. Don't make it about yourself. Like, it's your son, be proud, no problem. If someone asks you a question after the game, no problem, answer it. Don't insert yourself in the situation like that. It brings no good. And to your point, Pro, you don't know if it's a fan. You don't know who it is. Like, if you're a visiting team, I don't know that's someone's dad. I might have done something to him. And I think it's just a shitty situation that hopefully the NBA takes notice of. I don't think parents should be courtside. I just think it's too emotional of a game. Put them, if they're going to be courtside, they need to be strictly held to account, even more so than a regular fan. Because you're going to get emotional as a father or a mother, right? Like, you might say something stupid. And we've seen that now with Morant's father. We've seen it with different parents at different times, even significant others sometimes. It's an emotional game. You're going to say shit and then all of a sudden the player engages with you back, and then it becomes, don't talk to my mum, brother, auntie, uncle, sister like that, or wife, and then that all happens, and it's just a shit situation.
Except Jokic's brothers. They can do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, fair point.
Okay. I've seen enough fucking Jason Bourne movies. Those guys can do whatever the fuck.
That is
Those
a valid
bushwhackers, they could do whatever they want.
But it's actually probably better if they're courtside, because the problem is you have them sitting up with the regular punters that are talking shit. Yeah. They just start swinging on people.
That's a good point.
Yeah, if you have them
mind
courtside,
if they talk shit.
Yeah.
Getting on the court though, Bogues,
no, absolutely
like
not.
To me, if he waved the towel right behind the basket,
no problem.
Look, it's bush league, but when you go up on the court, that's what I'm saying. Like, anybody gets on the court should be physically assaulted by security. Seriously, because they should be in a headlock, because there's no way you should be able to do that.
Well, it happens in soccer. It happens in soccer. It happens at NFL, right? If you storm the field, you're getting spear tackled by some security guard who's just like
no doubt
rubbing his hands together. Like, I've got my one chance to take someone out. Basketball's the only one. Basketball's the only one. They give you a little card and say, please leave the court nicely.
Debo from Friday should be head of security in every arena. And somebody needs to get flown in the air fight 15 feet after a left hook. That you don't get on the court. I don't care about how much shit you talk while you're in your seat, to a certain degree, of course. But when you go up to a guy after a game with no security in sight, but seriously, who's security in the inner Pacers? Because like that guy just walked right up to him.
Because they know they probably know that it's the father. And they know that's that whole like, oh, it's just the dad. Surely the dad knows better in this situation.
Yeah, he should know better, man. That's rough.
Not a great situation. NBA awards, most improved player goes to Dyson Daniels. I think it was a coin flip for him whether he got this award or the Defensive Player of the Year award. I think once he lost that award, the Defensive Player of the Year, which is fair enough that he wasn't in the playoff mix as per se, the play-ins and out. He got this one. I think it's deserved. His numbers, big jump from the season before. Some people argue, can you give a most improved player to a high draft pick? You can only go by the numbers, in my opinion. If you've made a massive leap, I don't care if you're drafted number 1 or number 60. If you've made a massive leap on the season before and shown massive improvement, some of it's situational, some of it's just the fact that he's got more minutes and more of a situation where he can actually play minutes, unlike New Orleans. But I think it's, there were probably a lot of other guys on that list that probably could have got it as well. But I think Dyson's definitely a good pick when it comes to that, Pro.
Bro, you'll like this as well, man. The first ever Australian to win the NBA's Most Improved Player Award. First ever.
First ever.
Yeah.
You know what? We're on a first ever kick. And hey, good for you guys. Congratulations. Hey, all you guys take a bow.
There's
Seriously.
another first ever
Take a
coming
bow,
in the useful and useless stat segment on
I'm
Dyson
sure there
Daniels.
is.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is.
So.
Hey, Trent, way to be on top of that too, by the way. The first ever. I think we should replace fact or fake news with first evers. We'll
That's
put up
basically
like 5
useful and
bullshit
useless
first evers.
to an extent. So there's a lot of first evers and useful and useless.
It's a good point.
But
congrats.
Yeah. Congrats to Dyson Daniels. All right, let's get in the playoffs. So Indiana versus Milwaukee. I had it at 4-3. You had it at 4-2. It goes 4-1 with an ultimate choke by Milwaukee in Game 5, Pro. Once again, the Doc Rivers choke things just have reared their ugly heads again. And they choked this one off. I watched this game live. Up 7 with 40 seconds, up 4 with 20 seconds, turnover. They give up an and 1 up 4, which you let him lay it up. You play the free throw game, you should win that game. So they give up an and 1, go down 1, then they throw the ball away. Beasley doesn't catch it. I think it was Beasley that didn't catch it. And then Indiana get a layup and win the game, basically. So they had their chances in this series, Milwaukee. I mean, the Lillard injury didn't help, but they fought. I mean, they probably played a little bit better than most thought without Lillard. But I thought it could have easily gone 6 or 7. But credit to Indiana. I mean, they've been in a lot of close games now, especially in this postseason, and they've managed to etch out some wins right at the last second. And much deserved series win for them. I don't think it took anyone by surprise that Indiana won, but it will be interesting to see. Beyond this, we'll talk about Indiana later, but the rumors are swirling that Milwaukee and Giannis could part ways, and there are some teams circling that, at least from people I know in the league, that have said there's numerous teams circling, San Antonio being one of them, a few others out there that are circling Giannis, and that Milwaukee actually want to do a deal with, and San Antonio is one of them. So it will be interesting to see whether he stays. I think he's got 2 years left after this season and a team option in the 3rd year with Milwaukee. But will he finally say, Pro, this is enough, I need to get out of here?
It's an interesting deal for sure. They've done what San Antonio, after winning a championship, what San Antonio did later on in the whole dynasty deal that they had going on. They kept on flipping assets to try to just sort of rearrange the players around Giannis and try to just build things around him. I think they did a pretty good job, bringing in Middleton, bringing in Lopez. The problem is those other assets that you have that are tradable end up just getting older and diminishing in value, where now you can't really move them. You saw that with Middleton at the end. The best they could get was Kuzma. That didn't really work itself out. They had the Holiday deal because Giannis's camp wanted more offense, so they did the Dame Lillard deal, which I think a lot of people would have done if that's the case, that they needed offense, to chance to acquire him. Now I just think it's to the point where they can't really upgrade that team. They don't really have the assets to upgrade. And if I'm Giannis, to be honest with you, if I want to try to facilitate a trade, the first team I'm calling is Oklahoma City, and not only because of the talent that they have and them knocking on the door of a championship type team, but only because, in my opinion, because of Chip England. He needs to figure out the shop. And Chip England's the one guy in the NBA that's working on an NBA bench that's done that with countless players, that he can get that thing done going forward. Now, they've got enough assets to get the deal done. You get you Jalen Williams. You can do all those picks. You can do whatever you want. Now, the question is, does Oklahoma City want him? And yeah, they should, but they have this team where they have all these guys still under rookie deals. And They got Giannis at 30 years old, which they're going to have to give up a lot of draft capital to do. Now the question is what they want to do it. There's a million trades they could make. They could trade with They could trade with Houston. They could trade with them. You could trade with San Antonio. There's many teams that will take them on. It depends on what Giannis wants to do. Does he want to continue to battle through and see what he can do? I just think the East is too strong. I think the teams ahead of him are just too strong to leapfrog, and I just don't think they have the assets. Now you got to wait another year on Dame, who's going to be an advanced age with that Achilles. And
that roster.
What else can you do?
That roster's a 4-5 at best in the East.
Yeah.
Then you're facing, in the second round, you're facing Boston or New York. Like, I agree with you. The 5 teams, and this is from someone that's pretty close to the situation within Milwaukee. Sent me this about a week ago. The 5 teams that Milwaukee are targeting to do a potential deal with. Orlando is the only one in the East, which would have to involve something with a Wagner. And you got OKC, San Antonio, Houston, and Golden State. Golden State would be picks with Kuminga, Houston, Thompson, Eason, Smith, something along those lines. Castle would have to be involved with San Antonio, and OKC would be Williams and some picks. So they're the 5 that have been brought up by someone who's pretty close to the situation there. And funnily enough, the 3 of these teams were leaked by, I think it was Windhorst, about 2 days after I got this text. So that made me feel a little bit better about my source. But they are all 5 teams generally are intriguing in their own way. You look at Orlando, it seems like a place that Giannis would love, warm weather, smaller market. You put him next to Banchero, could cause some problems. OKC with the talent they have, you just mentioned. San Antonio the same. Like imagine San Antonio with Wemby and him at the 4-5. Just from a defensive point of view, holy fuck. Like your deflection, block shot central, would be an absolute nightmare to play against. Houston, same kind of thing. And then you got Golden State, some picks and Kuminga with a Draymond and a Steph. Maybe a bit of a shooting issue there with Butler and Draymond and Giannis together, but defensively, another mammoth lineup that you can have defensively. So they're the 5 interesting teams, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of good options there for sure. If I'm taking Kuminga, I'll probably take about 72 picks with Kuminga to make that deal work if I'm Milwaukee. But with, like I said, I'm going to circle back to Oklahoma City. They have the picks. They've got the assets on the bench, not only with Williams, that they can play. I think right now that would be the best. Now, Presti being the best GM in the league and very shrewd as far as how he does things, knowing that, he's in the driver's seat with it. He doesn't have to make that deal, but if he would, I just think it would be great for both sides. But yeah, I mean, as far as the Giannis thing, I mean, look, they've been a very professional organization. They've done, besides like as many head coaches as they've gone through since they won a championship, though. Like they've gone through a few. That's the only problem they've had. GM, the front office has been pretty solid and stable what they've been doing. They tried to do the best they can. I mean, look, they went through trades and moves and they shuffled that roster around to try to make things work. It's just, I just think that they've reached the point where I don't think they're going to get much higher there. And I think that, look, if you're going to start this thing over, it depends on what you want. And I think the Oklahoma City deal with Williams, who's, a top 40 player in the league, and picks, I think that's the best deal you could have. Castle, if you're at San Antonio, it's probably Castle and some guys. That's decent. But I think that's San Antonio. And then there's Houston that has, all these young guys. Yeah. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what goes on.
Yeah, I agree. And by the way, I said Beasley before. I made a mistake. I meant Gary Trent Jr. lost the ball. Beasley's no longer with the Milwaukee Bucks, so a bit of a brain fade there. But for the series, Giannis, 33, 15, 6.5 assists. He did shoot it. I know he touched on the free throws, but he shot it at 70%, 69.8. Can get better. He actually shot it pretty well this series compared to his regular season numbers. The next best for Milwaukee was a surprising series for Gary Trent Jr., which I thought he'd be more of this kind of player when they made the move, like a bucket getter that can just get hot on a dime, but not much help after that. They had Portis at 14 and Porter Jr. with 11.2. But you look at Indiana in this series, just so balanced, man. I mean, Siakam led him with 20 points a game. Then you got Haliburton with 17, Turner with 16, Nembhard with 15, Nesmith with 14.8, Mathurin 10, McConnell 10, Toppin 8. They just do a really good job of sharing the ball. I think that's what makes Indiana so dangerous. They share it. They take wide open, good shots for the most part, and they have some guys that can close games. So that was a series for the Indiana Pacers. They move on to the next round. We'll touch on them shortly when they've already played Cleveland, which we'll touch on. Next series we'll get to is the Clippers and the Nuggets. Absolutely dismal Game 7. Hate to see it. I actually watched it, and basically it was one of those games where you knew it was over at halftime, but you still watched to see if there'd be a little run from the Clippers to maybe get it under into single digits early in the second half, and then you can watch the rest of the game. But I mean, they made it closer than it was towards the end of the game, but just Denver were elite. Denver were Jamal Murray. Welcome back. He's found it in the playoffs. Just I don't know if he was just coasting through the regular season fatigue, whatever it was, but completely different player in the playoffs so far. You know, Jokic was Jokic, average a triple-double again for another playoff series. He was at 24, 11, and 10. But Jamal Murray, 23 points at just under 50% and 40% from three is going to get it done for him. If he continues that form, they've got a chance to keep progressing. Porter Jr. is still the one that you just don't know what you're going to get from him. He was at 11 points for the series. Wasn't horrible, wasn't great, kind of disappeared at times, but Russell Westbrook, just infectious energy. But the Clippers just couldn't get it done. I mean, James Harden, the story with Game 7s just continues to come up. Now, you need to get to Game 7, so he's still a fantastic player, but the old haunts of Game 7s for James, he's 43% in the series, really didn't have any impact in Game 7, and Kawhi led him with 25. They just went super ISO. I don't know if you saw that game against Denver Pro, but it seemed like, especially in that second half, when they just needed to get a good solid shot, it seemed like everyone was trying to do it. I'll get you the shot. Even Kawhi was taking some bad shots. Now, he's a bad shot maker at the best of times. He can make tough shots. But it just went super ISO based, and they almost panicked when they got down 11, 12, 13, 14. And that quickly went to 20, and the game was over. So congratulations to the Nuggets. We both had the Clippers, I believe. I think you had them at 4-2. I had it at 4-2 as well, I believe. No, I had them at 4-3. We both found it 4-2 for the Clippers. So the Nuggets prove us all wrong. That coaching change. Now they've doubled down on that. I don't know if you see all the comments on Hoopsite. Jokic and whatnot said ownership wanted to create some energy and buzz to win a series in the first round. Like Malone was just going to throw a series if he was still the coach pro, but they are off to the second round. And this was probably one of the better series of the first round, bar the Game 7, bro.
Yeah, I was impressed by, I thought besides obviously Jokic and Murray, I thought Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Russell Westbrook today yesterday was really good, in Game 7. I think they were the big reasons why they were in that position, besides obviously the player, they're two, the two studs with Jokic and Murray. I thought Christian Brown did an unbelievable job on James Harden. I thought Harden actually did a decent job in the first half. I mean, I think he had like 9 assists in the first half. I mean, and they probably messed up like 4 or 5 baskets on his driving kicks where they had shots at the rim that either got blocked or they just missed. But I thought the energy of those, the second unit was really good for Denver. I thought Christian Brown did an unbelievable job defensively, showing energy, running the break, getting open shots, straight line drives. And I just thought he did an outstanding job. Westbrook's energy, attacking the basket, making shots. I mean, I just don't know where that jumper's been the last, 13 or 14 years, consistently, if he can make that. And Peyton Watson, I think it was like 4 for 4, making corner 3, just driving it, playing good defense, showing good energy. I thought they had a hell of a series with the Clippers. Yeah, I mean, they just, they hung around there probably a quarter, I'd say a quarter, and then probably until the last 3 minutes of that second quarter, and then they just blew it open in the early third quarter, and they couldn't find anything. Kawhi, Kawhi, James couldn't get anything really going. Zubac was okay, but not great. But they just didn't step up and play the way they need to play. And it's unfortunate because they had a good year, especially the second half of the season. And James Harden had a really good season. And the problem is, same thing with like a Doc situation. You could have a great season, it doesn't matter. They want to see if you could actually win games deep in the playoffs, or in James's, Harden's case, Game 7. And unfortunately, he didn't come to play. He came to play. Like I said, I thought Brown did a great job with him. I thought he just didn't have juice to get to the basket. He had that juice going during the year, early in the series. I thought he was pretty good at, but like he just didn't have the juice to get plays done. Now he did a really good job driving it, getting two on the ball and making plays for other people. Like I said, they dropped like 4 or 5 in that first half, and he still had 9 assists. I think he had like 13 to 15 assists in Game 7, but they just didn't have it. He needed to step up a little bit more offensively to give them, more points generated by himself, not by making passes, but scoring. He just didn't have it. It's unfortunate, but hey, Denver played great. Like I said, they've got the star power. They've got a lot of really energetic, tough-minded players that know sort of where to give guys the ball, when, sharing the ball, and cutting off the ball, playing hard defensively. Yeah, congratulations to them. They played really well.
Where to for the Clippers? That's going to be the interesting thing with where they go. I mean, I saw some comments from T-Lou just basically saying it'd be nice to get James and Kawhi back for a full season. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to manage Kawhi for the rest of his career. And I think why they made that run was because he came in relative. This is probably the healthiest he's been in a playoff kind of end of the year for a number of years. I think James has a team option, I think. He has a player option. James Harden does, whether he returns. Norman Powell's in the final year of his deal next season. Kawhi's there another 2 years. Zubac is there long term. Bogdanovic is returning. Jones is returning. Quinn, Eubanks, and Batum as a player option. So I wonder what they'll do. I think, look, you probably keep most of it together and you roll it back. I think another year together. I'm big on. They don't have any huge issues. Like you went to a Game 7, you laid an egg in Game 7. You easily could be in the second round if you shot the ball well and things went well in Game 7, right? I'm a big advocate of keeping guys together that are half decent and give it another roll of the dice. I think that the roster makeup's pretty decent. Probably could use with another backup big. I mean, they're playing Ben Simmons at stretches for 5, which didn't give him a whole lot offensively, was better defensively, and then they had Eubanks in there as well. So I'm interested to hear what you think they'll do roster-wise. And for the Australian listeners, where do you think Ben Simmons is at? Without knowing, I know where you're going to go. You're probably saying Europe or China, but in all honesty, like, where do you think is he a vet min deal away from being out of the league, or do you think he's still going to remain as a role player for another 4 or 5? I know Australian listeners will definitely like to see what you think there.
No, Bogues, I mean, all jokes aside, and I've had my cracks on Simmons, for sure. I think that in the right situation, not only a team that wants to give him a chance to, be in the rotation, but I think that his mental has to be like, I need to attack these things versus, and I just don't think he's wired like that, but I think that he could be a 1+1 somewhere, maybe vet minimum, maybe a little more, and he could contribute to a team. At times, I thought he was okay for them. He's got to be able to like be aggressive where he's going to get to the free throw line. They're going to have to use him in different spots, but playing him at the 4, at the 5, at the 3, in different things as far as being able to get around the basket, good passer, get out in the open court, do some things defensively as well. But I think that there is a spot for him. I think for that team as well, because they need it. They need guys that just know how to play high basketball, like you can pass, has size and length and things like that. And he does have a high basketball IQ. It's just, where's his competitive spirit? Does he have that left? And, only he knows the answer to that. And he's been flatlining that the last few years, being a really competitive type player. And if he could put that together, put one good year together, I think he could sort of get this thing back on track a little bit. Will he go back to what people thought he was? Absolutely not. Can he be a guy that could be a rotation player, maybe even move into a starting spot in a couple years? Possibly. Look, at what, 28 years old, I mean, there's plenty of time left. Now, as far as the Clippers themselves, I thought they should have kept Paul George early. Obviously, that was a hell of a move not to do that. And I just thought, hey, look, you had all these guys together. You made these moves. Why aren't you going to keep it together? Well, financially, it put them in a really good position. A, you don't know about Paul George's health going forward. Is he going to be a guy that could stay healthy? Right? I mean, sort of like a Morant situation. They're at like 176. So they're a non-taxpayer. So that means they have their full mid-level exception. They could give $14 million out to. So they have flexibility to bring somebody else in that could just sort of add to that rotation. Look, their starting five is not bad. I mean, you go with Harden and Kawhi, then you got Norman Powell and Zubac, Chris Dunn, you got Bogdanovich there, Derek Jones Jr. You've got some guys that could come and play and help you. Ben Simmons could be that guy. Obviously, I'm not going to break the bank to keep Simmons, but if he wants to stay a 1+1, where if he plays well, he could opt out and then go somewhere else, just to keep him in-house. I think the Clippers know who they kicked his tires a little bit, since acquiring him. I think it would be good to keep him and just to keep him and ramp him up a little bit, look, I do like his skill level. I just don't like his, I just think he's a lack of a competitor. To me, I just don't trust that. But I think they have some, look, I thought that they were the one team that could definitely compete with Oklahoma City if they met them in the playoffs. They had some obviously bad luck, getting to this game 7 and things like that. Denver played great. But I think going forward with that non-taxpayer mid-level exception, they could pick up a couple of guys here and there. I think there's definitely some moves they can make going forward that could, put them in, in a conference final contention or even more. You never know.
Yeah, I think with Ben, I think the thing is, I think he's now penciled in as a 4-5 in the league. I think the perimeter point forward days are over. I don't think he's going to,
sure.
And I know early in his career he struggled with being labelled a 4 or a 5, didn't like it. But I think we're starting to see he was exclusively played as a 5 in this series to guard Jokic. And he can cause some problems from those positions. Point forward, point center on the offensive end is kind of where everyone's waiting for that old Ben Simmons aggressiveness to come back, which all stems from the free throws, in my opinion. As a guy who's once again been through the free throw yips at different times, it can affect your aggressiveness, and I see that in Ben. I see him limiting that aggressiveness so much so that he won't shoot a layup if there's a body nearby. He won't attempt the layup because he doesn't want the chance of potentially getting fouled and going to the free throw line. So that's something that hopefully in off-season sports psych, just maybe changing that shot a little bit. I don't know. But he's got to get that. He's got to get that back. That to me is everything. Yeah,
I'll get him to 70%, Bogues.
Yeah,
I'll put the Landale Simmons camp together.
And his right hand's nice too. So he could be even one of those things where you flip it. There's been a lot of guys that have done that. So I think it just comes down to that. That's defensively. He's when he's in the right mindset, at least providing a little bit offensively, he can be up there in the all defensive team talks. Like he can switch multiple positions. He's long, he's athletic, and that's where he really caused a lot of problems in Philly.
Bogues, he's 28.
It's crazy, right?
How about that?
I feel like he's 35.
How long he's been around?
It's crazy.
Yeah. The first time I saw him, he was entering he was at the Nike camp in LA. And I heard about Ben Simmons. I heard this, that, and the other. I didn't know anything about him, but just heard. And I watched him. And the first thing I thought about, because remember, his shot wasn't that bad, right? It wasn't terrible. It was sort of like a Giannis situation where, like, after the first and second year, it just sort of went south, right? I thought he was Lamar Odom. He had a lot of Lamar in him because he had this size, unbelievable passer, which people don't understand how good of a passer Lamar Odom was. And he just played in the open court. So Nike brought in like top high school guys and then top incoming college and college guys to work out, in front of NBA scouts and things. And Sabonis was at the camp too, at the same camp. And I was like, wow, this guy's really good. And then you just stop being around him a little bit and you could see some red flag stuff a little bit, but not much. And then I went to China with him a couple years later. And then I could see, all right, yeah, I could see this going a little south, but obviously it's gone real south. But like you said, Bogues, defensively, when he's locked in, he's elite. He's got the size, he's got the basketball IQ to be a good defender. and the passing, and then the ability to just to get around the basket and do some things. Like I said, the free throw, Bogues, I'm telling you, it's not that bad if the guy, first of all, he's just has to, yeah, he's got to dedicate himself to it. It can't be just like, I'll work on it in July and August when I go on my, wife beater tour where I got my wife beater on playing in front, and making shots, in an open gym. No, like he needs to dedicate himself to it. 2.5 months of changing that thing and putting high arc on it and just streamlining it. I'm telling you, but it's not only that, like you said, the sports psych part. He's got to be like, okay, I changed this. I'm making shots and workouts and practice and all these things that I'm doing. I'm going to have to be able to do it in real games where I got to get myself to the free throw line and force
you
myself.
Want to get there. That's the hardest part, right?
Yeah.
Because you've had that PTSD type stuff where you've been at the free throw line, feel like the world's against you, crowd's booing, you miss, you're like, damn, I don't want to get there again. That's the hardest part of it is like, and I finally broke through it towards the end of my career. I had a 2 or 3 year period there where it wasn't great, for being honest, and then it's kind of like feels good to break through those shackles, but you have to want to be able to get there and be like, you know what, I'm gonna be aggressive. If I get fouled, I'm going to go there aggressively in the right mindset. Even if I brick 2, I'm going to be aggressive again. That's the hardest thing in the world, and that's you got to have the most perfect form in the off season. Shoot with you, shoot with Chip, get it to 100% in the gym. It's still that anxiety of going back there where your brain's told you, shit, I've been here before, hasn't gone well. You got to break through that. That's the hardest thing. So hopefully it all goes well, and like he's still a fantastic basketball player. Hopefully he'll be involved with the Boomers, but I think he just needs to get that part, and then I think with that his spirit and everything will come back with that. I don't think it's a lack of motivation thing or a lack of. I think it's just confidence and just getting to the free throw line. All right, next series, Pistons and Knicks. You had it 4-1, I had it 4-2. Pistons were valiant. I think this easily could have been a 7-game series. We had the infamous 2-minute report from game, was that 3 or 4, where they admitted game 4, they admitted that they messed a play up late in the game, which would have given the Pistons 3 free throws. And then game 6, Detroit just, pissed on their own foot, essentially, gave that one up, a la the Indiana series with Milwaukee. They should have won that game, albeit Brunson hits a fantastic 3 at the top of the key to kind of put them ahead, and they never looked back. But this was a great series. I like this series, even though it was 4-2. It felt like a 90s/early 2000s series, bro. I don't know how you felt about it, but it felt like a grind. It was a hold. We thought there was going to be a fight at times. And the team that won the series had to make tough shots, and it was Brunson, averaged 31.5 points for the series, 8.2 assists. Towns averaged 19, and Anunoby with 17.5, and Bridges 16, and Hart with 11. Well balanced for the Knicks for the most part, but whenever they needed a big bucket, Brunson got it. Towns got some early buckets for him early in the series, some big shots for them late in games. Detroit just probably not enough offense. Probably need to find a bit more offense on that roster. Cade with 25, 8, and 8 for the series. Tobias Harris, their second leading scorer at 15. And no disrespect to Tobias, but they probably need to find someone else to get into that second option scoring, maybe move Tobias to your third option. Then all of a sudden you've got some danger to your team. Beasley with 14 and 9, Schroeder with 12.5, Hardaway Jr. 12, and then Duran and Thompson with 11 respectively. But good series nonetheless, bro. I enjoyed this series for an East Coast series. It was a grind. It was a wrestle. It was WWE at times, but the Knicks deserve to move on.
Yeah, I agree with you. The offense just didn't have enough from Detroit. They were physical. Both teams are physical, went at each other. I just thought that the Knicks just had a little bit more. The good thing for Detroit, though, going forward, Bogues, is don't forget Jaden Ivey missed basically the whole year with injury. So, they do have, he averaged 17 a game for them. And he is, him and Cunningham playing together is pretty effective. And so you don't have to really lean on Tobias as much. But I agree. I think Tobias is a good, fourth option for you, even second unit at times. I like the fact that they go big at times with Doran and Isaiah Stewart. They play tough, they play hard. You got Malik Beasley making threes. Cade Cunningham is stepping up into be an elite, maybe top 10, top 11 player in the NBA. And they just didn't really have enough. As far as the New York side, I was really impressed by Karl Anthony Towns stepping up offensively, having some really big games. for them. Him and Jalen Brunson were just a great 1-2 punch, and then everybody else sort of like, really gave gave what they can give. Bridges and OG and Hart, and those guys just play hard, and you expect that out of Tibbs. Going forward, Brunson was just ridiculous. Obviously that game winner was a huge deal, but somebody who could just put a team on his back like that. And I know he hasn't really had a long career, Bogues, with New York so far, but I mean, he's playing himself into maybe having a chance to be maybe the fourth best player in Knicks history going forward. Not only what he's done in the playoffs, which he hasn't done a lot in the playoffs yet. They haven't really, made it to the conference final and final. That's why you can't really put him with the Ewings and the Willis Reeds and the Walt Fraziers. But what you could bring to him is just the ability to put that team on his back every night. The guy just plays hard. Puts up 26 a night and just winning playoff games for you. And not, again, they haven't really turned that corner yet, but what Brunson's doing is ridiculous. And what Karl-Anthony Towns is doing for them, which like you would, when he was in Minnesota, he was just that guy could stretch the floor, make threes, score, have every 4 or 5 nights really take over. But like being able to put up 24 and 13, over a course of a season, and then put up big numbers in some playoff games, very meaningful, points in playoff games, a lot to be said with that. So, great job. And it was a good series. Like you said, it was old school. So it was good to see physicality. It was good to see guys going back and forth. It was good to see the refs not really calling that every night, every play, and letting them play a little bit. So yeah, it was pretty fun.
Do you know where Detroit sits on total salaries in the league this year, bro?
Yeah, hold on. Let me.
No. Without looking, have a guess.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, shoot. Total salary. I'm not even looking at anything. I'm just sort of looking at their roster without numbers. Man, I don't think Cade even has his second deal yet. So, Bogues, as far as 1 to 30, are they like 19, 20?
They're 30, dead last.
Yeah.
In salary spend.
I can see that.
14 million less than the 29th team, Orlando Magic. Next year, they're going to be dead last with 128 million in committed salary. So they have some room to get a free agent. Do you know who number 1 was, by the way?
Oh, man. Boston, right?
No, the Phoenix Suns. So,
really?
Yeah, they were 220 million this season. Boston third with 195. So it just goes to show you, I know people in the NBA always, go after teams that they think go over the salary cap that never do. As much as they think, but sometimes it doesn't matter. Like Phoenix, 220 million. They spent 80 more million than the Detroit Pistons, and they didn't make the playoffs. And the Pistons, like I said, arguably could have snuck through the second round. If they few calls here, few calls there, they get to at least 7. You never know what can happen in a 7th game. But Detroit, credit to them and the way they've built their team, and now they've got a war chest of money, man. And the following season after that, Cade's deal is going to kick in, but 2 years from now, they've got 60 million committed. So they've got money to build around that young team, and that's exciting to see. So good on the Detroit Pistons there. Lakers Wolves. The Wolves pretty much make light work of the Lakers. I didn't see it going this easily for him. Luka's kind of had Rudy's team's numbers throughout his career, or early on in his career, especially with the switching game and whatnot. I thought that would be much of the same. I had 4-3 Lakers. Boy, was I wrong. You had Minnesota at 4-2. But Minnesota looked really good. Really, really, really locked in. Well balanced. I thought they did a fantastic job of having different guys step up. I touched on Jaden McDaniels last week. I thought he was phenomenal throughout this series. Rudy has just an absolute monster night in the closeout game. Just what did he have? 20. Where is it here? I just need to find it. Apologies.
24? Like 23 or 24?
Yeah,
27 rebounds?
27 and 24. Now, albeit a lot of layups and dunks, but 24 rebounds is 24 rebounds in my book, and I thought he was a big reason why they were as a game high plus 18 in that game. But the Lakers just not a whole lot from Reeves in this series. I think hurt them. They really needed a Reeves to give them a little bit more. He was their third best scorer at 16 points a night, but 30% from 3, 40% from the field hurt him a little bit. Assist to turnover ratio 3-2, not good. Luka led him with 30 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. But his 6 assists, pro, to 4 turnovers. I mean, that's poor for Luka. We're usually seeing 2 to 3 to 1 on assist to turnover ratio, and then you got 25 for LeBron with 9 rebounds. I think the one thing I noticed, and I touched on it last week for the Lakers, at least, is that they need a roll big. They need a guy that can catch a lob, and that's where Luka was so successful with Dallas. He had 2 of those guys. They could roll, catch a lob, and then it creates spacing on the kickouts for open threes. They were playing Hachimura at the 5 exclusively for much of this series. They're in fact playing their starters for most 40+ minutes together, but they just had no role presence. So Luka gets downhill, does such a good job of holding his man off out of those pick and rolls, but there was nothing there to throw it to. It was just kickouts for 3. So I think that's something that, when they were trying to make the trade for a center and it fell through, that's something that they addressed. They know they need. They thought that, it could have been Jackson Hayes at times. That is his game, but I think it's everything else with Jackson Hayes. The bad part that you get with the lob threat is not engaged, not as smart defensively, and basketball IQ reads not as good. But JJ elected to go small ball and it backfired, and Edwards was great, made some big shots throughout this series, 27 and 8 for the series with 6 assists. I thought Randall was actually really good. I know he gets a lot of shit at times, but 23, 5 and 4, but it seemed like, he shot just under 50%. He shot it at just under 40 from 3. It seemed like he was not forcing as much and let it come to him a little bit more, rather than just, sometimes he has a habit of head down. I just got to get my feet in the paint, charge, turnover, deflection. I thought he made some really big plays for them at times. Naz Reid, not as good a series as he had in the first round, but was solid early on in the series. But they're going to be a tough matchup in the next round.
Yeah, Bogues, it was a very interesting series in the sense that, a lot of heat on JJ about going, just going repeatedly going small. I'm not a big matchup type of guy. I'm not really good at that. So I don't really like to question head coaches with that. It is interesting. You have Jackson Hayes there, Vanderbilt. You had some, size, but, I think we've all been around head coaches that, they have that guy that maybe other people like, wow, outside of looking in, or even on your own staff, they're like, wow, he could probably help us. And when that head coach has it in their mind that player can't help them win, it doesn't matter who's telling them, doesn't matter what he's reading in the paper, doesn't matter what telecasters are saying that cover the game, they're not going to do it. And obviously he had really no faith in Jackson Hayes. And look, that's his choice. And I think as a rookie coach, he'll, I know he got a little heat, actually it was a bullshit fucking question that media guy asked him about, like, it was a loaded question about his assistant coaches.
Yeah. I saw that.
Yeah, it was a loaded fucking question. Look, when JJ fucks up, we'll talk about it. I think he just went with his gut. He the league's telling you to go smaller, bigger. I don't know. Like, he decided not to do that, and that's
there's not much there. There's not much on that roster that he could have. Maybe. No. He rests those starters an extra 5 minutes isn't making a difference in this series. Like.
No, and look, Minnesota played great, and Edwards competed. Obviously, he's just continued to step up as being one of the best players in the league. Gobert, Gobert gets as much shit as anybody, but when he brings it as a lob threat, as a roller, as a defensive, presence, throwing cheap shots, when he's into it, he's really hard. He's one of the best players in the league defensively. And a lot has to be done. Again, role players and bench guys are the people who really streamline these series and put you in position to win. And, Naz Reid and DiVincenzo, those two guys really put them in a good spot, as far as like just bringing toughness, bringing winning plays, winning attitude, and they played well. Like you said, Randall had a good series. He stepped up when he needed. Jaden McDaniels, even Conley at times, and then just going forward with the Lakers, look, I think Rob Pelinka did the hard part, right? He brought in a player that's unacquirable, and he acquired him, and Luka, and he put him in a great spot. And the problem is they need that protection. They need defensively. Look, we could all talk about Luka's defense, a lack thereof, and getting attacked, and all that's true for sure. But he's not a good player that's a poor defender. He's an elite offensive talent that's a poor defender. And so what they need to do, and the hard part now going forward, is how do you acquire that rim protector? And the only real way, because of the fact they're a taxpayer, but they're not in the apron. They're about 3 or 4 million off in the apron. So they're not going to hit the apron. They have a taxpayer mid-level exception at 6 million. You're not getting a rim protector for that. But moving either or both, Reeves and or Hachimura, to get somebody that can do that. Can you get Jacob Podol? Can you get a Lopez? Can you get a Capella? Can you get Cornette, which is going to probably be sold off in Boston? Can you get someone like that? But you're going to have to lose something to get it. Look, the hard part's already done. You've got your MVP candidate. You got LeBron that can give you another good year for sure. Now the question is, the only way you could acquire this rim protector and other defender to help you with Luka in the lineup is to acquire it. You're going to have to trade. Hachimura can get you a little bit of something if somebody wants to dump a player or get you sort of a lower tier player, like a borderline starter. Hachimura could probably get that for you. But the only way you're going to get an elite player or as close to an elite as you can get is probably by trading Austin Reeves. Maybe they don't want to do that, but they can't win and advance in the playoffs with the roster they have. They did a great job getting Dorian Finney-Smith. I think he does a great job defensively. He helps Luka in that lineup, gave it a knockdown shots and defend, but they need that 5. And if it's not going to be Vanderbilt, where they can't really trust him to compete every night and to bring it mentally, and then Jackson Hayes, obviously they have their issues with him, unless you have veteran minimums and guys that want to come in. I think Capella is a pretty good one because he's like 30 years old. And you could get him for like a 1+1. Maybe he wants to rekindle his career. And imagine just catching lobs from Luka and LeBron all night, and all you have to do is protect the rim and don't really have a lot of pressure on you offensively to do a lot. Then that probably could be somebody they could acquire. But it'll be interesting.
Adams is a free agent that's linked there as well. I'm pretty sure he's.
What do you think they should do, both? If you're the GM,
I agree.
You
got to find a lob threat for him. Like Luka excels with a role, a guy that can play 25. You can go to your small ball lineups, but you need a Steven Adams. Can Steven Adams start with his body over 82 games? I don't know. That's
tough.
The issue. I think he's definitely got some injury issues that are going to be long term. But Capella's a good one. He's been relatively healthy for the most part of his career. Hasn't had any really bad injuries. Real good lob threat. Great shot blocker. That's definitely an option as well. But they need to find that guy. They can poach Gafford from Dallas. I don't know. They need to find just get him a lob threat. You need a lob threat.
You think hey, the FBI, if you actually make a phone call to Dallas ever again, the FBI, the CIA, the DEA, the KGB, they'll lock somebody up. You cannot make a phone call from Los Angeles to Dallas to call anybody. They do not allow it anymore, dude. If I'm the Lakers, I would just deal with Nico at all costs. You might get Gafford for a box of towels and a Gatorade cooler, and he might say that Gafford was drinking all the Gatorade at practice. That's why he moved him. If that's one guy you're going to fleece, it'll probably be him. Police in Dallas would allow JFK to go in another convertible if he had another chance. That they have a better chance of doing that than having fucking a phone call going from Palinka to Dallas ever again. They will not allow it. But yes, I agree. Gafford would be great for them.
Yeah, any lob threat. All right, Boston, Orlando. Not a whole lot to talk about in this one. It went as we predicted, 4-1 for Boston. We both had this one pretty easy pegged, as did most people. Look, Orlando just not enough. Some injury concerns. Guys kind of limped into this playoff series for them. Banchero averaged 30 a night for him with 8 rebounds and 4 assists. Wagner, 26, 5 and 5. They were resilient. It wasn't an absolute whitewash of a series. They made Boston work for it, but Boston could, they rested Tatum for a game. They rested Holiday for a few games. Boston's looking more towards next month. Mid this month, next month, with the way they're playing, making sure they're healthy for that. So they're just so deep, man. They can afford to miss, a top 10 player in the league and just plug it in and continue on their merry way. Porzingis, White has a 30-point game for him this series. Like it's, you look down to that roster, even Pritchard, Horford was good for him at times. Cornette comes in, provides reasonable minutes. So this was as predicted. Orlando, they're 29th basically in salary spend in the league, so a lot of potential there. Goes up a little bit next season, but they'll have some room to acquire as well. In some free agency, they could find another piece in the mid-level or just above to come in and help them. So they're in good stead. They're in a good spot. I like where Orlando's at. They're not, they got work to do a little bit and try to get above that 7 seed, and especially considering how they went last season. But I like where they're at. They'll be fine long term. But Boston, pretty much a box tick series for them.
Yeah, Bogues, let's be honest with Orlando. I mean, they were decimated by injuries all year. Bonchero, Wagner was hurt. Even Mo Wagner was hurt. Suggs is hurt. They just had so many injuries they had to deal with, and not having their real full lineup for most of the year, and then getting, obviously having their best 2 players with them, but still not Suggs. They needed the guard play. They needed a little bit more step up there, and they didn't, just because they had so many injuries and things they had to deal with throughout the year. Like you said, they have money to spend, so they could acquire somebody before those deals sort of kick in. And Mosley does a great job, going forward. They're good, going forward for sure. With Boston, the interesting thing, they extra time to rest Brown. I guess they're trying to turn the corner with him with his knee, with his knee deal going forward. And that's it, just health for Boston. And that's what it's going to be. I really think it's going to be hard for anybody to really dethrone them, in the championship, consideration. That the issue, Bogues, I don't know if you read that during the week. It got leaked out that a lot of people are saying that they're going to have to make major changes on their roster going forward to cut down that money. They are getting dangerously close. I mean, they're at 2 this summer. They're going to be at 220, and that thing's just going to skyrocket up. That new owner that's coming in, I mean, you're coming in paying, that I think that's costing close to $500 million with luxury tax and things of that nature. Even if you win the championship, with all these teams that win the championship, they make all this money. Remember, we talked about it extensively in the show that, like, they're basically breaking even. So they're talking about, making moves to cut that salary. That's going to be a tough deal to do, Bogues, in my opinion, because probably the 2 guys you're going to probably talk about are Porzingis and Holiday.
100%.
And then there's some other,
and White,
and there's some other guys.
Yeah.
Like a Hauser or whatever. So the problem is, do you take Porzingis or do you take Holiday into your cap if you have $30 million in cap room? That's a lot of money to be taken on.
I think Porzingis is the odd man out. I think you can replace him at a cheaper level with a role player. I think he played very well in the finals at times last season. Had that one game where he came back from the injury and was just a man on fire in that first half. I can't remember what game it was later on in the series, but that's probably a guy they'd look at as being able to replace. I like to see, and this isn't defending big market Boston, but I think if you draft, develop, and pay, you should get a bit of a luxury tax relief, I believe. It stops teams from accumulating talent and overpaying, get penalized for that 100%, a la the Lakers, right? But if you've drafted right and you've developed them, and let's say Tatum, what's he on 5 years, 250 or something like that? Let's say that's fine, but then it only hits your cap for maybe 75% of that. So it gives you a bit of a discount because you've done the right thing and kept guys in there. That's what I'd like to see. You're still paying the same, but just hits your cap for less.
Bogues, would be interesting because if you're trying to cut $30 million, right, and a lot of these deals, it's hard for you to make deals when you're in that apron. They're in the fucking 9th apron. Forget about the 2nd apron, as much as they're going to spend next year. But that's going to be tough because a lot of times on the regular trades, they allow you to get within 25%. So you could take 25% less in money, but that's, on Porzingis' deal, that's $30 million. So next year he's on an expiring deal. So you're not just gonna stretch him out and cut him and take that down $20 million in your cap, for 3 or 4 years. It's going to be hard for them to really get down.
What does it really cost? What the hard cost for him? 70,
probably about $80 million. It's like
exactly.
It's like a buck and a half. Like $1.50 for $1.75 for every dollar you spend. So it goes up, man, considerably. So it's going to be tough in a trade to really get that down unless you're taking somebody into somebody's cap room and they're give you a couple of picks, because, you know, or you take an expiring deal where you can cut, you know, maybe it's like maybe a $30 million player that they're only $12 million guaranteed to take down $18 million. That's a tough deal, man. So that'll be interesting with Boston going forward. I know we said we weren't going to talk about it too much, but I just thought that was an interesting.
Yeah, I just think they shouldn't be penalized. Like, I just think they're being penalized for drafting right and then having to pay. They shouldn't be penalized as much as they are. If you're just stacking your team up with talent from other teams, penalize those teams 100%. Well, what's going to be interesting with that conversation is OKC in the next 3 or 4 years, because, you know, they've accumulated so much talent and draft picks that they've actually done well in the draft. They're eventually going to get penalized for that in the near future, and then it'll be interesting to see how they navigate that, because they are one of the elite front officers in the league. All right, next one, Cavs Heat. Another. We don't have to get too much into this one, but
no, I won't say.
Yeah, 4-0. Not accustomed to seeing Miami just get absolutely pummeled. I mean, Game 4, basically, they gave up. Cleveland were very good, but Miami also gave up late in that series. They knew they just didn't have enough talent, enough fight to get through, and even cause, you know, Cleveland any murmurs. I mean, Cleveland didn't stop and think this whole series that they'll threaten at any point, which Miami sometimes can do as a 8, 9, 10 seed. Tyler Hero 18 a night, Bam 18 a night. Mitchell 15 a night, and Wiggins 11. That was it for them. They couldn't find any off the bench. None of the young talent really stepped up for them. And Cleveland, like I said, they only had, you know, no one played more than 31 minutes for them in this series. Garland was that. He only played 2 games in this series. Even Donovan Mitchell 30 minutes, Mobley 30 minutes. The rest of their guys all played basically under 30 minutes, if not bottom tier 20 minutes. So it tells you where the series was. Garland 24 a night. Mitchell 23, Mobley 16, and then pretty well balanced below that. But much of a box tick series, don't have to get too much into it. But Miami's in a tough spot with what they do. Probably we discussed that last week. So I just don't know where they go. They're middle tier. I think 10 or 11, 12 on salary spend, somewhere around there. Just not sure what they do. They can't really bring in much more. Hero's been forever rumored to be in trade rumors. The one valuable piece they have is Adebayo. I doubt they're moving him, so don't know where they go. Roster build is interesting, but Miami off vacation, Cleveland progress.
Yeah, it's tough on Bogues. Like Boston has to shed $30 million in salary. We have to shed like 3 minutes from this, so I won't even talk about it. That's a tough one for Miami going forward. So that's all I got to say for that. That was not much of a series.
Would be a good spot for Giannis if they could somehow finagle it. I just don't think they have enough assets. But Giannis in Miami would be definitely interesting if that could happen, because that seems like a perfect place for him in the way he plays and the way he's headstrong. All right, Warriors Rockets just finished 4-3. I had 4-3. You had 4-2. Warriors win 4-3. We both got that one right. A hot and cold series for the most part. I mean, game to game, it just seemed like every game was a completely different team that lost and a completely different team that won. Golden State got they got out early in this one, won the first couple of games, and then, you know, Houston claw their way back. Houston won game 2, and then Golden State won 2 straight. But yeah, just a hot and cold series. I think Houston's best was 120s, 130s, and their worst was below 100. Or in the low 100s, and then Golden State, as much as we talk about them being a high-scoring, high-output team, they wanted this game in the 90s, 100s against a young team. And I think when these games boiled down to valuable possessions, late in quarters, late in games, that's not Houston's MO. We laugh about the AAU roster they have built with a lot of the kind of young and dumb talent, and I'm saying that in a nice way, where that's what makes them so good, that they don't have that fear because they're so young and inexperienced. They just kind of go at you. But in a tight game that's in the low 100s, those possessions matter so much more, and they're so valuable. And you saw it today, some of their offensive possessions, they just couldn't get it done. And credit to Golden State. They came with a game plan. Looney came into this game not playing much before. Kerr making a little bit of adjustments, countered that Houston two-headed monster. But they just could not find a steady flow of scoring today. And Golden State, look, they weren't elite in this game either offensively. Buddy Hield had the game of the series for him. He scores 30 tonight. Steph didn't make his first shot till seconds left in the first half. I think it was, Pro. I think it was a 3 late, and it was a big 3 too to put them up double digits, right? So, very well balanced team, and just seems reminiscent of that run that no one believed they could make when they won the championship against Boston a couple of years ago. Now they've added Jimmy Butler, they've added a few other pieces, but it just seems like, they'll be around, they'll be okay. You got to worry about them, but they're getting older. But they get a bit of momentum here, and they'll be okay. Houston, in an okay spot. I mean, Sengun was their best, 20, 12, and 5. Van Vliet, 18, but not great clips for him at 43% from the field. Better from 3 at 43%, but he's they were making him get into the paint and take tough shots. Amen Thompson played really well in this series, both offensively and defensively. Not known as a shooter, but just his energy, infectious. Ended up taking basically Jabari Smith's minutes for most of this series, which was interesting as well. Eason played a decent role. Brooks wasn't great offensively, but they're tough. They're strong. Adams, 6 rebounds in 20 minutes a night. Did a decent job there, but they just, I think offensively, they're just going to get a bit more flow to it. I think defensively, pretty solid for the most part. And then Golden State, Steph 24 a night, Jimmy Butler 18. Podziemski 11, Buddy Hield 10, and then you got Moody, Draymond, and Pat Spencer after that. But a series of adjustments, game to game, it all changed. We spoke to Strauss. He was heavily against them going to the Sengun on Moody thing in the regular season because it showed the hand. How did that all play in? Ime Udoka countering a lot of Golden State's play by putting 2 bigs out there for a lot of the game. So it was an interesting chess game, but I expected a little bit more from Houston on their home floor in a Game 7, but they just couldn't get it done.
Well, first of all, I hacked Buddy Hield's phone, and his first text he got was from Bruce Frazier, said, "Hey, I know I didn't work you out for your whole time here, but I'm going to be working you out in pregame tomorrow, so just be ready." But anyways, as for the Houston Rockets, look, I mean, it was a classic experience versus inexperienced team. And inexperience is good because you don't know any better. So you're just going to go hard at a team. And that's what they did. I mean, they were down 3-1. Everyone thought it was going to be over 4-1. And then, Golden State just looked gassed for like 2 straight games. I thought they were done. I thought Golden State, I've seen this before with teams that are older, that had success before, championship success, and they just sort of get to the point where like they're just not doing it anymore. And that's what they seem like. And look, this game didn't really get out of hand until later into the game. Like you said, like Curry didn't really get going. Draymond was great. I mean, I thought Draymond needed to be drug tested. He had 8 points in the first half, maybe even more. The guy was banging threes, fucking scoring.
It was aggressive.
I thought he did a great job defensively with Sengun, and just I thought that Sengun played well, but I thought the physicality really got to him.
Forced it a lot of fadeaways when he didn't have it.
Yeah.
Tried to get position and would just shoot it because he was like, it almost seemed like I'm shooting this no matter what, and then would just shoot a bad falling away hook shot. Yeah.
No, and I think that bothered him. But I'll tell you what, Amen Thompson, oh man, he's going to be a really good player from for years to come. He reminds me of like a Trevor Ariza, young, early into his career. He's just not a shooter yet. He can't really make shots consistently, but the defense, the transition, the cutting, the running, the activity played great. And I thought, at times they got caught up in trying to be a little bit too physical at Golden State, playing into the mind games of Draymond and those guys, trying to start up a little bit too much. I thought they got to him a little bit mentally, but again, I think that's good that they're inexperienced. I thought Jabari Smith played well at times. Adams gave them that sort of that big lineup, like you said, and I thought they played well. And, Jalen Green has to settle into games better. Like he can't just be someone who dribbles around and tries to isolate and score. In the regular season, when teams are disinterested, you can get away with that. When they're gearing into you in game plan, you can't play like that. And I felt as though Game 1 was way over his head. I thought the end of Game 1, he started settling into some possessions where he looked really good because he was just simple. He attacked the basket, attacked transition, open shots. But then he just has to be more consistent and just be, let the game come to you. And I know that's very cliche-ish to say, but that's the truth. And I thought, like I said, I thought Thompson played great. I thought Jabari Smith played great. Brooks gave him some toughness. Sengun played really well. Fred was good, but just not efficient. And then for Golden State, look, it's just a team that's been there before, has a lot of guys that are battle tested. Their backs were against the wall for a while, but look, Buddy Hield came to play. I really haven't seen Buddy Hield make 2 shots in a row all season, and it was great to see him, really bust out and play well in this when they really needed him. And I thought he played great. And Draymond played, very just good with his just intensity and just defense and just playing solid. Looney played well. I think everybody just sort of played their role. It's great for Golden State to see him advance, and it's gonna be a fun series going forward. Against Minnesota.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, I just like the chess game in this series, but yeah, it's going to be moving on to the second round. There's some real exciting matchups. We won't go too in depth, but let's go Minnesota Golden State. Then where do you have that one going, Pro? Now Minnesota have home court advantage. Game 1 is a quick turnaround, I believe. It's Tuesday US time, so not a lot of rest for Golden State. But where do you have this one going?
I'm going to go Minnesota 4-2. I'm going to go Minnesota 4-2. Yeah, just for the home court advantage and the short turnaround time. And I just think they're rested. Those guys have been through this before now from last year's run. I thought they had a good series, like a short series at LA. I think they're geared up. I think they could do this. I think they could be pretty good. What do you think, Bogues?
I'm going to go 4-3 Golden State, shocker, but I'm going the Jimmy Butler revenge tour as to my motivation.
That's right.
Yeah, with the Timberwolves and all that. I think he's comfortable in that arena, and I just feel like Golden State are really good at making adjustments on the fly. I think they'll probably drop game 1 in my opinion, just with a quick turnaround, but I think they're really good at getting to the film room, making adjustments. I think we'll see some Looney in this series. They will go bigger at times to try to stymie Gobert and get him out of the game and just cross-match him. So I'll go 4-3 on that one. Cavs Pacers. Currently 1-0 for Indiana, by the way. They won game 1 today in what was a very impressive performance. They ran the Cavs out of the gym. I don't know if you watched that one, Pro, but they were getting transition baskets in the fourth quarter, which is inexcusable for Cleveland. Defensive rebound, 1 pass up the floor, dunk for Siakam, like 5 minutes left in the fourth. Inexcusable for Cleveland. They weren't as locked in now. I don't think Garland played today again. I think he was out hurt. So they are missing some. But, yeah, I've got this one as 4-3 Cavs, but I think Indiana are going to make them work for it.
Yeah, I go 4-3. And the thing about the Pacers that are so good is, look, they don't really have a superstar. They've got all these guys that play together. They move the ball. They're tough.
Hold on.
Energy.
Tyrese Haliburton's father's on the line. He wants to have a chat with you about that. Comment, Pro.
Mr. Haliburton, I didn't mean it, obviously. I apologize. But hey, look, you gotta be respectful to your son, and you gotta be respectful to the security staff. As blunderish as they are in Indiana, you gotta respect the security. But anyway, I think that'll be a 4. I think it'll be 4-3 itself as well. I just think that they're just so fun to watch because they're tough. They play with energy.
Who's that, Indiana or Cleveland?
Indiana.
So you got them winning 4-3 or Cleveland? No. I've got the Cavs 4-3. Okay.
But I just really like the way Indiana plays. I think that they move the ball. They don't really isolate that much. They just drive. They drive to attack the basket. If you bring a second defender, they kick it off for a 3. They play hard. They'll fight you. Carlisle's all about that. And I think it's great that they don't have that superstar. And I know Haliburton's really good, an all-star level player, but even not, in my opinion, not a superstar. He's a good, he's a really he's got talent, no doubt about it. And they just have all these guys that can make threes and they make it hard on you and they push it up. It's going to be a tough series for Cleveland for sure. I thought Cleveland did a good job with attacking the basket. That Donovan Mitchell, he was really quiet at times. Obviously that 3, I think he was 1 for 11, but once he started attacking the basket, attacking the rim, Indiana didn't really have a rim protecting team out there. I thought he took advantage of that. They were playing physical. They got into the game, but I just thought they did a poor job defensively in the first half. And I just thought that Indiana never quit. They never really. You always thought this game was going to turn. Cleveland had it, cut it to 4, cut it to 3. Just couldn't turn the corner. But I think the Cleveland is going to settle in this. What the greatest things about the playoffs is game planning. Making those adjustments for game 2. I don't, I think the refs did miss a few calls. Not that I'm going to blame it on that, but it was physical. A few of those drives where they went hard to the basket, they got shoved and pushed, no call, which was great. It's great to see, but I think that they'll adjust. But it's great. Indiana is great to watch, but I think Cleveland's going to readjust, and I think they'll settle into it.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a fun game. Like we said, we'll see what the Cavs are made out of. If they can't get through this series, they don't deserve to be there. And it's that really good regular season argument. Can you transition that into the playoffs, which we'll see from OKC as well? So OKC Denver is going to be, I think it's going to be a great series as well. I think every series in the semifinals, the last 4 series left, I think they're all intriguing in their own way. I really do. I think OKC Denver, I've got OKC, but 4-3, I think it's going to be a tight series. I think Jokic is going to cause some problems like he does for anybody, but especially in this series. They do have Hardenstein, but I think when they go small ball lineups, trying to put Chet at the 5, that's not going to work in this series. And to me, this whole series comes down to 2 things. For Denver, I think if we get the Jamal Murray we had in the first round, they've got a chance of winning the series. And what can Porter Jr. bring you? I think Gordon's been very consistent for him, even throughout the regular season. Jokic is Jokic. But can Porter Jr. bring what he's brought? I think Russ, the energy with Russ and Brown, you don't have to question that. It's can he be that 4th, 5th piece that can hit the crucial 3, get the crucial stop, be fully engaged? But OKC, very, very well balanced. I think a lot of different weapons, a lot of different options, but have not proven that they can get deep into a playoff run with this roster yet. So similar to the Cleveland story, I think they're a little bit better suited than Cleveland in the West, but that's a question mark you always have with a young team. But I'm looking forward to seeing, how this goes. Denver's been there before too. Denver's been in these battles. They've been doubted. They've won a championship. They've kind of gone through those series where it's, kind of running in mud and they just seem to get it done. I want to see this series when it gets bogged down into 90s to 100 game, which they didn't really get tested by Memphis. They had to make one comeback, but Memphis were pretty horseshit for most of that series, especially when Ja went down. But Denver will make him beat them. They're going to have to beat Denver, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Well, because I've been flip-flopping every other day. I change on this, on this series, just thinking, even when the series wasn't clinched, when I was just thinking about Denver versus OKC, you bet against Jokic, and I always fucking lose when I bet against Jokic. So you know what? I'm going to go with them 4-3 game 7, which is almost impossible to do unless you're the Golden State Warriors, that they did it against Houston, winning on the road. But you know what? Fuck it. I'm awful on picks anyway. So congratulations to OKC. They'll win the series. If I say that Denver's going to win it, but I'm going to say Denver 4-3. I think that Jokic and those guys are locked in. Now, the biggest question marks is Westbrook. Can Westbrook play under control? Like aggressive, but under control. Can Porter Jr. make shots consistently, which he hasn't really shown that he can in a while on a long, consistent path. And then also you got Porter Jr. and then you've got, and can Murray really step up and play at a level that he needs to play at? And I think that, look, this was a really emotional series. It was a tough series, that the one they just played in. So I'm not going to go in experience with Oklahoma City, although that could be a factor. I'm just going to go in the Jokic factor. And those guys didn't play off of them. And, it was great to watch, but they got no chance now that I picked them. So, OKC, congrats.
That's why they got Hardenstein. So that's why they got him. They got him for this very matchup. That's why they got a reinforcement at the big spot. So it will be interesting to see where it pays off. Celtics, Knicks, Pro, who you got there?
I got Boston. Again, Brunson's like a Jokic, right? But I'm gonna go with Boston. I just think Boston has a little bit too much. I think it's gonna be closer than these games were in the regular season with New York and Boston. But I think that Boston's gonna win this one 4-2.
Yeah, I got 4-2 as well. I think I don't think New York. I think New York were great in spurts against the Pistons. The difference is going to be when they're not great in spurts against Boston, that Boston's going to punish you quickly. Because they hoist those threes up, they push the ball, they push the tempo. Detroit couldn't really do that. Detroit had numerous games where they got stops and they got loose balls, they got rebounds, they couldn't score at the other end. And New York would just stay within 5 or 8 and then make a little run. The difference is against Boston, you're going to be down 17 instead of 6. And you make a 10-0 run, you're still down 6 or 8, right? So that's why I think the difference with the offensive firepower Boston have you make those 3-4 minute lull mistakes defensively, as New York does sometimes, they're going to punish you. And I think they got a lot of guys that can handle different guys for them defensively. I think especially inside, Horford's had a great last series defensively. They've got different matchups they can go to. Pritchard off the bench has been key, so I'm going to go with Boston 4-2. But I think every one of these matchups has the potential to go 7 games, in my opinion. I really do. I truly believe that. Like, I think it's even the Celtics-Knicks series could squeeze to a 7-gamer potentially. So I haven't been this excited about a second round for a while. Usually there's always 1 or 2 even in the second round where you're like, kind of a box.
This is going to be good.
I think all of them, they need to work for their game. So we'll see how that goes. All right, useful or useless, pro. A few good ones here. So we'll go to the Dyson Daniels. He's the first most improved player winner to average 3+ steals per game since the very first winner of the award, pro, which was who?
Alvin Robertson.
Wow, great guess. Did you read it?
Only because I'm a huge Alfred. No, of course I didn't read the sheet. When's the last time I read the sheet? No, Alvin Robertson. I think I saw that stat somewhere, but Alvin Robertson was my guy.
1986.
He was at San Antonio when San Antonio was terrible. I loved Alvin Robertson, and he was in Milwaukee. But
yeah, well done. It was him. So useful or useless, bro?
Useful for sure. It's Alvin Robertson. Unbelievable.
All right, fair enough. All right. Russell Westbrook is shooting better from 3 than Steph Curry, Kawhi Leonard, Jason Tatum, Anthony Edwards, and Jalen Brunson this playoffs. Useful or useless?
Dude, this is useful. I mean, this guy couldn't make... I mean, come on. Like, you could drop him off a plane.
41% for Russ, by the way. 41% for the series.
Yeah. I mean, the guy was making shots like crazy. Useful in the sense that he just not a shooter. And the guy stepped up over a course of a series. Of course, a series isn't that long a period, but that guy stepped up in important times for that team. I'm going to give it to him on useful on that because just he's never really shown consistency as a shooter his whole career. It's great to see that. Yeah, now look, that doesn't mean anything as far as him being a better shooter than those guys, but I do respect the fact that he did it over that period of time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he getting dare to shoot him, and I also love the steal and calculated technical foul on the rim hang, and then telling him to go the fuck home. Russ Westbrook, it was great. It was awesome. So that's great. Great to see him making shots. Last one, touching on Luka Doncic, pro. So stat nerds out there obviously chart this now too, but Luka Doncic was blown by on 65.4% of all the drives that he guarded during the series against Minnesota. For those playing at home, what that means is I'm guarding you one-on-one. I go to close you out. You drive straight past me. Not have to work, crossover through the legs, catch straight by me, and then my teammates have to help. That's a blow by. So almost 3 out of 4 times, pro, he's blown by defensively in this series.
Yeah, that's useful. I mean, look, like I said before, I mean, you have a guy like that on your roster, you just got to have guys behind him that could really back him up because he's not going to put that much energy into the defensive side. But that's useful in the sense that, like, that's been something that's been pinpointed in previous playoff series, especially this one as well. You know, the one that you just played in, and being able to target him and be able to drive by. But that's a hefty percentage, man. I know I did my homework on the finals last year with points per possession and all that. I didn't even touch it this year, but that's a pretty useful stat.
Very useful. Once again, solidifies the fact that you need some rim protection behind him with him in the lineup. And it's just it's a domino effect that causes. You get blown by, then it's a rotation, then it's swing 3, or it's a lob, or then you're putting, it causes a rotation where all of a sudden a small has to box out Rudy Gobert and he gets 25 rebounds. It's more than what you see on the stats for those wondering why it's such a bad thing. And look, Luke is not a great defender. He's a maestro at the offensive end, but you just need his defense to go from shitty to not so shitty. Like you're not going to get it from where it is now to above average. You're not going to get that. If you can get it to just below average or average, it then outweighs everything because he's elite at the other end, right? So that's the tough thing with all of this, and I think that's a big part of what's going on with that series was just they just couldn't get stops, and they were picking on him pro in numerous games. They were putting him in a lot of action. You had DiVincenzo go by him. You had Randall go by him. They try to cross match him on Rudy. Then an O-board gets given up. So they were strategically picking on him. And I don't know if it was a shape thing or whatever. It just didn't look engaged. It looked worse than last season when it was brought up. He is reportedly playing in the Eurobasket in a couple of months' time, which will be interesting to see. But obviously, he did come in. We all know this, come in a little bit half-cooked off the injury from the trade from Dallas. Wasn't in great shape, but you can only have that as to why you're not defending well for so long. So I think for them and the Lakers to be elite, 40, 41-year-old LeBron on the roster too that's going to play 30-plus minutes if he comes back next season, which he will, all signs to pointing he will, there's not a lot of defensive acumen on the perimeter there in LA.
Now, the one thing that I could say about players like Luka is that those guys are ultra competitive. There's a lot of players that have the ability to do it defensively, and they just don't really care about it. They just want to get their numbers and want to get their scores and whatnot. And from what I could just see of him, and I only spent a year with him, I'm not that close to him or anything like that. So it's not like I have inside information, but just the competitive nature of the kid, that how great the kid wants to be. Look, he's not going to be Scottie Pippen defensively or Bruce Bowen or anything like that. But those guys who have holes in their games, and every player in the league from 1 to 520 or whatever, they all have holes in their game. But the ones that really want to be great and competitive and know that something's really stopping them from, not only does he want to be competitive and be the best player in the league, he wants to win, and that's my honest opinion about it. And I think that in time, it's like those players who are out of shape, and then they get hurt, and then they know that I got to be better with what have you. I got to take care of my body, better diet, better what have you. The defensive stuff, this has been 2 straight years that it's come up. And I think that it's tough because when he got acquired with the trade, he's coming off an injury. He didn't look in great shape. But I'll tell you what, as the season went on, I thought he got in much better shape.
No doubt.
If you look at him, yeah, he did look better. And I think he's taken a pounding with this negative press that Dallas gave him after the trade and all this other stuff. And then, obviously the finals last year and things. And then obviously in this playoff series, I think you're going to find in the next couple of years, in my opinion, he's going to get better at these things. Will he be great? No. Will he be, will he be like a Navy SEALs guy with a 6-pack? No. But I think he's going to be better with his shape, just because I don't know. I think if you're competitive like that and you want to be great and you want to win and you keep reading about it year after year, you're going to make some adjustments. And that, and in my opinion, he's going to get better at it. I don't know when that's going to come, but I would think that, especially next year, knowing that it's LeBron's probably last year at this, that he'll try to make some adjustments on that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, like I said, it's not a matter where you need to make this massive jump to an all NBA defensive team. That's not going to happen. Just get it to an average level where it doesn't hold your team in a negative light at the defensive end, where you have to constantly worry about shit like he's about to get burnt, I need to rotate over earlier, and cause a domino effect. So I agree with you though. Great players will watch film. He'll know about all the rhetoric. He'll know about people talking about it, that it needs to be better, and we'll see how it goes. Fact or fake news? What do you got?
Bogues, LeBron James has more Game 7 wins than Kobe Bryant. Fact or fake news?
Just going on, I think he's played in the most playoff games. I think I saw that last week. I think he's played in the most playoff games in NBA history. Just based on that, I would say fact.
Yes. 6-2. Kobe's got a better winning percentage at 5-1. But yes, 6-2 to 5-1 in Game 7s.
Interesting.
Second question. James Harden has lost Game 7s with 3 different teams. Fact or fake news?
Oh, fact. Yeah, he's done it with Houston. He's done it with Brooklyn against Milwaukee when KD put his foot over the line. He's done it in Houston, I think, against the Warriors when I wasn't there. And then I think he just did it again yesterday.
Oh, 3 different teams, you're saying. Fact, yeah. You're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fake fucking news, by the way. He did it with 4 teams. Yeah, he did it with 4 teams. Houston, Brooklyn, Philly, Clippers. He did it with 4 teams.
Oh, Philly.
He lost the games.
Who was Philly against?
I don't know, but I just saw it right here. And it was...
Who was Philly against?
I have no fucking idea. But
New York?
He wasn't there with that. Hold on.
I don't know who that was.
Let me just make sure.
Boston.
Hold on.
Was it Boston?
I
think it was Boston.
Harden 7 with Philly. I'm surprised Trent hasn't beat me to the spot with this one.
That's a hard one to go because
yes, James Harden lost the Game 7 with Philly. According to Yahoo Sports, Boston, 2023 Game 7.
It was Boston. Beautiful. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night not knowing it was Boston. But he's had a bad run, and that's gonna. He's been so close so many times, man. Especially that one against Golden State where they go 0 for whatever from 3. That's probably the biggest one.
Yeah,
right?
like it's just this. It's the same thing as Doc, right? Like everybody shits on Doc. I get it. I actually stick up for Doc. I think I like Doc because I was around him in Boston. I like what he's about. But like, if you keep losing playoff games, you just keep getting fuel to the fire on like not winning, past a certain point. And the same thing with James Harden. Like, same thing with Chris Paul. Like, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you have a great season, you're doing all the right stuff, you're playing great, you're impacting winning. If you don't do, it's just this whole circle you keep going into. It's tough, man. With James Harden, like I said, I thought like James was doing all right with it, with passing, getting guys involved, this and that. But you got to win and you got to play well, and he didn't do that. And it's too bad. And I didn't even know this. I just saw this on like Instagram like 2 minutes before I logged onto this thing. And man, I was like, 4 teams? Fuck. That's rough.
Fairness, pro, the Doc thing, there's two ways to look at that last game choke. One is you had a player on you, which you can't really coach a guy not to give a guy an and one. When you're up 4 with 20 seconds left, you give a guy an and one. Let him lay it up or foul the shit out of him, no in-betweens. But Doc also, again, didn't have a timeout late in that game. He burnt his timeouts early for whatever reason. Indiana scored to go up 1, and Milwaukee have the ball with 1.8 or 2 seconds left, no timeout left.
No timeout.
They're the things that you just can't afford to make those mistakes in the modern era now. It could have been a review challenge, it could have been whatever. Got to keep one in your back pocket for those times. So, righto, thank you, pro. We'll see you next week, and hopefully some more good games this week.
I want to listen to what you guys have to say about this referee things with this travel agency. That's great.
Oh, wow, you've been following it.
I followed it a little bit. I did see it somewhere, so congrats. I'm looking forward to listening to what you guys have to say.
All right, man. See you next week.
Later. Yep.
All right, not a whole lot of NBL news over the last week. The only thing that has come up is the whole travel agency report by the Australian that broke the media in an owner's call. Just for full disclosure, I'm no longer involved in the owner's calls as I'll be joining a coaching staff. So I've kind of separated myself from that. So this is not coming from that call that I was in, because I wasn't in it. This is an Australian article coming from the Australian, from Yoni Bashan is the writer, which is not someone you really attribute NBL coverage from usually. Probably his first NBL article ever. Probably was like, what the hell does NBL stand for? But anyway, there was an owner's call. Dave Stevenson, the CEO, was discussing a freshly minted contract with a new travel provider for the NBL and their teams. He explained that a company named Performance Travel had been appointed the exclusive partner of the NBL, that it alone would be used to book flights for players and their teams to travel the country in the on-season, none of which was especially remarkable until Stevenson read the quiet part out loud, revealing in the interests of transparency, Performance Travel was actually half owned by the NBL's chairman and owner of the league, Larry Kestelman. As reported, Perth Wildcats owner Mark Arena went ballistic and hung up the phone in disgust. I believe Mark had to leave to pick up his kids from school, so a bit of mayo on that story from what I understand. But anyway, if he'd stayed on the line, he might have heard Stevenson's financial reasoning for the arrangement. Performance Travel would ultimately save the league much more money in fees. We think, what else? Then it references Jared Novelty and his integrity case against the NBL, which is well publicized if you want to read up on that. Moving on, the wrinkle to this story is the co-owner of the Performance Travel is a NBL referee and NBL 1 referee by the name of Jack Taylor. He actually refereed some games in the opening round of last season. Not a lot of games, but that is where this story, from the outsider looking in, can seem a little bit strange, or collusion, whatnot. It doesn't pass the integrity test from my point of view. I think the NBL is well aware of it, because within a few hours of this story breaking publicly, they had let the owners know, according to the Australian Financial Review, they let the owners know they will no longer be proceeding with the deal. As of now, they're going to pause those discussions for 30 days and then come back and, I assume, still do the deal, but they're just going to pause that at the moment. And I just don't think it's a good look. I think if you've got an active referee that's in business with anybody, whether it's a club, whether it's a owner, a player, a coach, anyone who's directly involved or employed by the NBL as an owner, CEO, I don't care what it is. I don't care if you babysit the CEO's kid. You should not be in business with them if you're on the court as a referee. And if it's for one game or 100, it doesn't matter. And most people would agree with that. It's just the transparency thing does not go well. And then from this has stemmed some other stuff where this, I'm not calling into, it's not to say that this referee has intentionally thrown games because of his business interests. That is not being alleged here. I'm just alleging factually what has happened historically with this. The same referee referees in NBL 1 East, which is a minor league in Australia that plays in mainly New South Wales and Canberra. It's come to my attention that after this broke, that NBL 1 referee, or that referee, had refereed a grand final series in the NBL 1 grand final in 2022. He refereed a grand final series in which he was a sponsor. His company, Performance Travel, was a sponsor of one of the teams in the grand final that he was refereeing. Once again, not a great look. That team ended up winning in a close game where there were reportedly, and I've seen the videos of the calls, there were reportedly some questionable calls that went on late in that game. Not alleging anything. And basketball, there was always 50-50 calls in the games, but they all seemed to go Canberra's way in that series, who were sponsored by the referee refereeing. So now, you put all that together, it just does not look good. Like I said, nothing untoward maybe happened. There was no, I'm not alleging that, I sponsor this team, so I'm going to make sure they get all the calls. But it's how it's perceived, how it's looked. From an integrity point of view, it raises the question. As soon as the question's raised, then the integrity of the game of basketball's questioned. It's not a good thing. It needs to be addressed. So this is just not a good thing. I think with everything going on from Hawks majority owner Jared Nowley with questioning the integrity, this is the worst possible timing for it to come out. And now it's out there and people have heard about it, and the NBL's done the right thing by pausing it and distancing themselves from it. I think the 30-day pause is a bit on the lesser side. It should be, we're not going to do this now. I understand the NBL's point of view saying, well, we can get the teams cheaper travel and blah, 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 but it just does not look good. And I think from the outside looking in, it's just something that needs to be addressed. And these are the kind of things that our game can't afford on any level. Minor league, under 12s, NBL, national team. You just cannot have these kind of things that just do not pass the pub test or have a bit of a stench to them, even though there might be nothing there. Like I said, you might look into it and say, nothing untoward, no untoward calls. We're happy with how it was refereed. But it just does not look good. So hopefully the NBL will continue in better through Dave Stevenson. Hopefully he can have a bit more of his CEO out on and think that as CEO of a league that's Australia's premier basketball league, this is probably not the best look. I'm probably going to have to argue with whoever I need to argue that we should not do this, because that is the role of the CEO. So hopefully he can get going on that and we don't have any more of these instances. But that's really the only down news from the NBL. Free agency is still in swing. It's quieting down a lot. Like, as I said, I think it's just going to be a case of waiting till NBA Summer League to happen, and then we'll see a bit more names popping up. But some teams standing pat completely, no announcements. Against Taipans, Melbourne United, probably the two that have not really been very active at all. in free agency. So it'll be interesting to see where that all goes. But that's news for this week. Next week, one more episode, then there'll be a pause after that one. I'm actually traveling overseas for the FIBA Hall of Fame, so I cannot do a podcast whilst traveling, taking the kids over. So deemed it pretty hard to do the pod with 2 kids in the hotel room and whatnot. So elected to just miss 2 weeks' time from now. But next week we'll be on. We'll recap more playoffs and hopefully more NBL news.